With the new season of Battlefield 2042 around the corner, I thought this was the perfect time to make a video as we approach the most important time that this game will experience. If you're a fan of Battlefield or gaming in general, then I'm sure you will know about the struggles that Battlefield 2042 has gone through. But what you might not know is that the game has seen a huge redemption arc, and is a topic that I've even made a video on in the past. The last year and a half, since November 2021, it has been the goal over at DICE to get the game to an acceptable standard, and as we approach Season 5, the game is almost there. This season will bring the final changes to the class system to bring it back to what it was back in the day, and will bring a new map as well as lots of new weapons. But I'm not here to focus on the next few days and the launch of the next season. I'm here to talk about the future of Battlefield 2042 and what it has in the next year. Because this game is desperately in need of a year 2. Anyone who has given this game a second chance, or who has stuck by this game since the very start, will tell you that it truly has become a great game. It might not be to the same standard as games like Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4, or even Battlefield 3 in the past, but it's currently one of the most fun shooters on the market. So the main reason that I think this game needs a year 2 is because if we look at the last year and a half, it's been DICE trying to fix the game. You know, we've had some new content, but if you compare the level of content we had in this game compared to previous Battlefield titles and the amount of DLC we're getting, it's clearly a lot lower. And this is because it's been DICE's goal to fix every map in the game that's already in the game, because the game, when it came out, the map design was very poor and didn't fit the same style of maps that we expected from a Battlefield game. But as they've shown with their map reworks and the DLC maps we have received, DICE have proven that they can make Battlefield maps, and they do know what they're doing when given the amount of time required. It's so important that Battlefield 2042 receives the second year of content, because now DICE have finally made the perfect base to build off. And from here, the only way is up. It would only make sense for DICE to have more time to focus on more new maps instead of having to rework previous maps. So the level of content we should be getting in the year 2 theoretically should be a lot higher and a lot higher quality. Maybe this is wishful thinking. I mean, it was only a year and a half ago that this game came out in a terrible state, so the track record of DICE that we've seen over recent years is still present. But to me, that's when it comes to game launches, because they've shown in the past that their ability to make a game recover over time is very good. Battlefield 4 as an example, Battlefield 5 as an example, and this game so far has been the best they can do in my opinion. Let's say, for example, in year 2 we get another 4 seasons, and for each season we get another few guns. So let's say 10 to 15 weapons roughly added to the game. And let's say they also add 2 maps with each season, and maybe in a couple of seasons they can throw in a few older maps for the portal mode which can come into Conquest. So let's say upwards of 10 maps potentially. I think the map department, there's still a lot lacking with Battlefield 2042. I do like the selection. I think some of the new maps they've added have been very, very good. But I think the main issue is just the lack of diversity with some of the maps. You know, we still don't really have like a city map with a focus on urban combat. You know, there's a real lack of close quarters maps as well. A lot of the maps are very open, and you look at a lot of the objectives and all the buildings are sort of focused towards the objectives. We haven't got a map like, for example, Siege of Shanghai, which in the past, the whole map is based on a city. All the objectives, all the areas located within the objectives and around the objectives, every part of the map is a building. I look at maps in the past, I can't remember the name of it. In the Battlefield 4 DLC, there's a map in like a town. Very close quarters, you can get up high, up, down, low. Very close quarters again, and I think it's like a sort of a market. And them type of maps can be very fun to mix up the gameplay. Also, maps in the past like Locker and Metro, close quarters combat. They bring that type of gameplay where you're always in action. Constantly, every corner you turn there's an enemy. We haven't got that type of thing. And I think they could add that as a playlist, add them 2 maps, throw them into a playlist. I think a lot of people would like that. And, you know, the lack of diversity is a real issue to me when I play Battlefield 2042. You're only experiencing these maps with open fields and, you know, buildings centralised towards the objectives, and that can be fun, and that's kind of what Battlefield is to its core. But there's a lot of people, especially the newer players, who, you know, they want to ease themselves in. They can ease themselves in with the larger player counts, but maybe they want a more Call of Duty experience, you know. I don't really want Battlefield to copy Call of Duty, but that's what Metro and Locker were. They were very sort of aimed at that type of player. All of this might be wishful thinking, You know, me saying that I want all this stuff, Battlefield and DICE, they're not going to take this into account. This one video, they're not going to take into account. But I think I'm not the only one that wants this type of content. But at the same time, I don't think it's completely unreasonable to suggest this type of stuff. Because in the past, we'd have DLC packs with 4 or 5 maps, and they would come out every few months. And, you know, by the end of the year, we'd have about 16 maps. You know, that's insane amounts of content. You know, I can't remember how many maps we've had with Battlefield 2042 and the DLC so far, but I can only remember about 4 or 5. So there's, you know, they still got to release another 12 to reach the same level as they had before with the previous games, you know. Battlefield 4 has about 4 DLC packs that I can remember, each of 4 multiplayer maps, and now they're giving out 3 multiplayer maps, which is great, but there's not been many of them. You know, I'm sure there's going to be something. There's got to be something, right? I mean, that's what we hope, at least. I mean, I'll be honest, the main reason that I'm making this video, and why this video really came to mind recently, is because I'm currently working on a Star Wars Battlefront 2 video, which kind of experienced the same thing as this game is experiencing, you know? I don't even need to tell you the awful state that game was in when it came out. I'm sure anyone who was involved with gaming at the time remembers the whole thing with loot boxes in the game, the whole thing with the lack of content, all the issues that we'd have in that game, we sort of have in this game as well, with the lack of content, poor decisions that lead to just problems for the community. But that game worked so hard, and it was DICE as well, they worked so hard to finally get that game to an acceptable standard. And in 2020, they'd stopped updating the game, and we were all waiting for that next update. Would they update it? Would they make another year of content? The game, there'd been leaks for more characters to come out. The community was always on edge. Would we get another update? But it would finally come out, we wouldn't get one. And it really sort of ruined the hype for that game. And it's still a good game in my opinion. It finally reached the level where it should have been at, which this game is almost done as well. You know, I think Season 5 will finally do that. So my main point here is that I don't want Battlefield 2042 to reach the same state that Battlefront 2 reached, where it finally had that player base that really enjoyed the game, where it finally had that hype around the game where we thought it was going somewhere, but in reality it just fell flat in the end because the developers decided to not continue the support. And I feel like with Battlefield, we're approaching that same time where the developers really need to outline their intentions with this game moving forward. A lot of this might be wishful thinking from me, but I hope you enjoyed either way. And please, if you haven't already, do make sure to subscribe because we're on the road to 1,000 subs and it would mean a lot to me. And as regards for Battlefield, all we have now is hope.